Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. What we're going to be doing today is something really exciting, but going through a bit of a Q&A just to celebrate, I guess, the 10,000 subscriber mark here, which I'm super stoked with, and really appreciative and thankful for you guys for tuning in and hopefully getting a little bit out of these videos. There's some awesome questions pertaining to surfing development, longboarding development, how to make you get better, and hopefully there's some insightful feedback with the experience that I've had both in learning and progression of my own longboarding as well as competing at the levels that I have across national and WSL levels. So really excited to get into that today. And if you are new to the channel, my name's Considine and I'm a professional longboarder, a longboard enthusiast and a longboard coach. And I'm here to share my learnings and experiences like these ones today with you all. So if you do find the video valuable, if you find it helpful, then please feel free to subscribe. And if you know of anyone else who might find it handy as well, then feel free to share it with them. But let's get straight into the edit. Alright, so let's go through the questions. So the first one, I'm kind of landlocked and I'm only able to surf about once a week. Do you have any land drills that I can do in between sessions for cross-stepping, drop knee turns, pop-ups, paddling, etc.? I know to become a better surfer, you need to surf, but I don't always have the luxury to get in and out of the water. Any recommendations would be greatly appreciated. So this is a really good question. Obviously for a lot of us, the conditions don't always suit or we can't actually get out into the water as much as we might like. And for surfers, I find that this is a very unique problem to surfing. If we're a tennis player or a soccer player or something like that, we could just go and repeat with everything that we're doing. And so it's quite easily to get the repetition and the skill development because of that. So in terms of what we can do at home, yes, there's certainly things that we can do at home to progress with our surfing in all of these areas. But I do think that this actually speaks to one of the key problems or the core problems that we face as surfers, which is we're very maneuver focused. So say we're learning to do the cross step or we're learning to do the drop knee turn, but maybe not understanding or focusing on the root cause of the problems that may be leading to us not being able to specifically complete these maneuvers correctly. So I find that home drills are really important or really helpful for two key things that might be limiting our surf progression. The first is strength, and then the second is motor patterning or muscle memory. So how we address both of those things. So for example, the pop-up, we may not be doing the pop-up correctly because of a weakness to our core, our hip flexors or something like that. And that's where home pop-up practice and just getting in the repetitions there, as well as doing some strengthening for your hip flexors, core, potentially your lumbar extensors, these areas which contribute to the pop-up motion, they can all be super helpful and will actually improve your surfing in that regard. The other way that we can improve, as we spoke about, is sort of motor patterning or how we complete certain things and making that feel comfortable. But to actually make sure that we're focusing on the right thing and that we're getting the best results possible, and this is something that I definitely, for the people who do online video coaching with me, that I get them to do, is actually get some surf footage of yourself so that you can actually analyze what's happening, what's going wrong. If we just practice the cross step or we practice the pop-up at home, a lot of the time it's a much more stable environment, so we don't actually know which part of the cross step, which part of the pop-up is going wrong for us in the water. If we have this on footage, then this is great because we can see maybe for our pop-up, our back knee is hitting the board first, and so that's why it's not as smooth as we need it to be. We might also see in our cross step that our legs are too straight, and so if we understand these things, then we can transfer that to some home practice to get better. The other thing that can be tricky here though is a lot of the time, and this is another thing that we find it very difficult to do as surfers, a lot of the time it's not necessarily just the maneuver that we need to be focusing on, but it's the overall setup or the skills that act as a prerequisite for these maneuvers. So for example, if we're learning to cross step but we haven't got the setup in place correctly, so we're not positioning ourselves on the board correctly, on the wave correctly, if we don't have the skills to engage the rail, the inside rail properly, and to maneuver ourselves onto the part of the wave that we need to be, that's where things like your home practice is a little bit limiting. But if you can get some footage and then you're able to translate what you've found with your footage in with your home practice, this is going to be the recipe for best results. And as I'm sure some of you know just from previous videos, apart from being a physiotherapist where I look at a lot of human movement, I do online surf coaching as well. If this is an area where you're finding some difficulty or finding it a bit tricky, then please just get in touch. I'm happy to organise some of that as well. Get some footage of yourself and let that inform what you're practicing at home. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so the second question. Any tips for balancing when you're hanging 10? I always seem to fall when I get my toes off the end. Okay, this is a really good one. There's a couple of things that we can actually focus on here. The first would be, oftentimes when we're going for a hang 10, we put our weight on our toes. And this is okay, especially if you want to accelerate through the hang 10. But more often than not, we don't actually have a really good feel for how the board's going to be reacting. And if the board does slow down a bit, or if the board gets put on rail or on its edge a little bit whilst we're hanging 10, then that's enough to throw us off. A really good thing to do is firstly to bring your weight back over your heels and bend your knees a little bit. This is going to be a really good position, just a more balanced, stable position, so that if the wave does slow the board down or does make the board turn a little bit whilst you're hanging 10, then not every little thing will throw you off. You'll have a little bit of shock absorption with the knees bent and the weight over the heels to keep you better balanced. And the other thing is, if you're quite experienced with your hanging 10, moving into a box 10 position, or a 10 where you've got the split stance, so 1 foot over each side of the rail whilst we're hanging 10, this can be really good for making sure that you're actually able to steer yourself out of tricky situations, or if it is getting off balance, then you are able to navigate your momentum and path on the nose. So that can be another option there. Definitely a high level problem, so it does take a little bit of getting used to, but certainly if we've got a lot of weight forwards over our toes and the board is doing not what we expect it to, it's a recipe for becoming off balance. So try these little things that I've said there, and I hope that helps. All right, the third question. So from Brian from Longboard Sessions, collaborating on any big projects in 2024. And we've got Tommy's comment below. Yeah, I don't know how much I can say about this at the moment, but certainly probably over the past year and a half or couple of years, Brian from Longboard Sessions, as well as Tommy from 10 Toe Surf, have been working on something, have put what seems like endless hours into it over the past, probably even a couple of years now. So I'm beyond excited to see where it goes. And then another one from Brian, congrats my brother, 10K is huge, expect tons of stories. I think there's a little thing on YouTube you can unlock, like Instagram stories, except for YouTube once you get 10K. See you tonight on our 50th Zoom meeting. Yeah, another one. Okay, if you could choose three other surfers to make a surf movie with, who would they be? This is a really tricky question. Obviously, so many people that I would like to, would be honored to be in a surf movie with. I guess off the bat, I'm thinking one of my favorite surfers of all time, obviously Harrison Roach, would be, epic to be in a film with him. CJ Nelson as well, spent a bit of time with him, but he's just, since I was a little kid, probably my favorite surfer. And yeah, just, I guess if I was to make a film with those guys, then it would be, I feel like I'd be a little bit fish out of water. But yeah, they're incredible surfers. So of course I'd be honored to be in any films with them. Who else? I think it'd be really cool to do a film. My good friend Josh Sea Monster from over in Carlsbad, California. It'd be really cool to do something with him. It's difficult because we're so far away, but he's an epic filmmaker, such a good surfer, so that would be really cool. Then, yeah, I don't know, I'm going over 3 now, but even kind of Devin Howard, Mikey February, those guys, just ooze style. So again, probably people that, I'd be a little bit of fish out of water, as I said, but I'd be stoked to do any films with them. Maybe one day, we'll see. It's kind of weird now. We don't usually do films, there's not as many kind of DVD films and stuff coming out like I was when I was a kid, but lots of social media stuff. But hey, that's right. What music or bands do you listen to? I can actually probably look here on my phone. Cool. Gang of Youths, great Australian band. If you haven't checked them out, then please do. Andy McKee. When I was a little kid, I was really into my fingerstyle acoustic guitar playing. And listening to Andy McKee, Antoine Dufour, Don Ross, all these guys. So really like listening to Andy McKee in particular. He's got some great songs, Rylin Drifting, check them out if you haven't. And then other ones, a lot of Australian stuff, so Tame Impala, the Waifs, Sticky Fingers, Woodlock, the Jungle Giants, Ziggy Alberts. Yeah, so they're the kind of bands I listen to. All right, next question. So what are the downsides of a hybrid/modern longboard? And in which conditions should you focus more on traditional longboarding, and in which should you focus more on a performance longboard? Okay, in terms of the downsides, I would say that the main downsides would just be around the flow and the glide. And this isn't to say that you can't have flow and glide on a high performance longboard. It can be done really, really well. If you look at the likes of, I suppose, Harley Ingleby, Taylor Jensen, they link their maneuvers really, really well. In terms of the board itself being naturally conducive to that, kind of flow, I would say that that's where the traditional longboard really is in its element, and where the high performance longboards probably aren't as much. But in terms of what the performance longboard will be doing, is it will allow you to have a tighter arc or a tighter turn, as well as with the, I guess if you have the side bites or the 2+1 setup, and then some sharp edge at the tail, it will allow you to move faster through your turns, have more control, less likely to slip out as well. And that's where, if you are going to be going out into some bigger conditions or waves with more push, that's where the performance longboard can really come into its element. Even today, I was surfing Bells earlier. It was probably around 4 foot or something like that. Bells does have a fair bit of push though. I had my just standard log or the Low Pro that I'm surfing at the moment, which I love. But for that wave, maybe a little bit too much board, I'd probably pull myself back down to a pintail or something like that if I just didn't have that in the car. But I would usually ride it out for those conditions. So you are looking for some more performance-y type of model if the waves get a little bit bigger, and that's where I would consider something like that. I don't have a 2+1 or a high performance board in my quiver. It's just not the type of surfing that I find I want to do at the moment. But for bigger waves, they react similar to a shortboard. So that's what you're after in bigger waves, the more performance style longboard. And then of course the benefits of your log is going to be it's able to get more critical tight in the pocket for your nose rides, create more lift on the nose as well. So just completely different sections that you'll be nose riding in for the most part. And then you're able to really engage the rail super nicely, more rail engagement with your bigger carving turns, as opposed to the high performance longboard where there's less so. But yeah, again, in bigger waves, getting a little bit more challenging riding I suppose your involvement style logs or even your Californian style logs. That's where you might start to, I guess change things up a little bit from a board perspective. Next one here. So if you were forced to go to a single board quiver for the next couple of years, which board would you choose? Make, model, specs, and why? One board. Oh, that doesn't leave you much option for I guess conditions. Probably the board that I just mentioned before, actually. So it's called the Slasher Low Pro. If you haven't heard of it, just at least check it out because it's an amazing board. Again, I'm not a part of that at all. It's a board made by CJ Nelson and Ian Chisholm. Ian's my shaper at South Coast Surfboards. But essentially it's an involvement style, kind of Australian style longboard, wide point back. You have to look at the tail of this thing. It's pretty crazy. The width in the tail, but then it comes quite narrow, fair bit of kick in the tail as well. But just in terms of what that board's able to do and the variety of conditions it's able to suit, usually there's a fair bit of give and take in your logs with what it can do. So better at turning than it's not as good at nose riding, or better at nose riding than it's not as good at turning. This one's the closest thing that I've found to having the whole gamut combined together, which is incredible. I think it is quite a challenging board to surf. It really requires the pocket and being really, really critical. But when you're able to establish that into your surfing, it's just the most high performance log, I guess is what you could say. You can put it on rail and go fast through your carving turns. You can get incredible lift through your hang tens, and it just holds you there in the pocket. I'm obsessed with it. So that's definitely would be my go-to if I had a board for the next couple of years. That's what I'd choose, but man, to not have a mid-length or a fish or I suppose any other kind of boards in there, it's pretty tricky, but that's what I'd choose for that one, I think. All right, next question. So, could you give us some longboard models for those beginners that are in the process of performing their first turns? Do you recommend us to start with foam boards or hard boards? Thanks. PS, considering this will be my first purchase. So when you're first learning turns, I would recommend going a fiberglass or hardboard. In terms of where you've probably come from initially, foam boards are okay, I think, to begin with if you're just getting the absolute fundamentals and basics. So popping up in the white water, getting your stance right, maybe starting to do some, I guess, riding of the actual green part of the wave or the wall. When you are starting some turns though, especially if they're more significant turns like a carve to the beach or a cutback or something like that, then I think the hard boards are where you're going to really want to, I guess, put yourself with. In terms of what boards, starting off with your turns, I think it's really important to get a board that's not super tricky. The things that'll make your board tricky at the start is going to be a flatter design or something with the wide point further back. So try and get something with a little bit of rocker. This just really helps for disengaging the rail when you're doing your turns, so you're not, I guess, bogging rail so easily, especially in the early stages where we're likely to be not quite getting our weight distribution right from tail to rail. And therefore, yeah, we need a little bit of room for error with respect to that. And then making sure that we have that wide point in the middle is super important as well. This is how we get all of our stability, or a lot more stability, when we're learning our cross-stepping forwards, and then also our nose rides. We can nose ride out further from the pocket if the wide point's in the middle. So that's going to be something that's really important. So in terms of designs and models, the Nova Stala at South Coast, again, I'm biased. That's a board that I rode for years. If you have seen me on the pink one before, that's a board I won some national titles on, Noosa contest, everything like that. So still a high level surfboard, but that can take you from A to Z really. It can take your surfing from a fairly beginner, intermediate level all the way through to an advanced level. So the Nova Stala, I think Takayama has an in the pink as well, which is fairly similar. I think that might even be wide point forwards. But yeah, all these boards will be conducive to allowing you to learn your turns nice and easy, and manage getting to the nose and stuff. So those are the types of designs that I'd be looking for in that instance. All right, what are you working on at the moment to prepare for this year's tour? Yeah, okay, so lots of training going on at the moment. This week, we're just coming into, I guess, our competitive season. I've got a competition in Burleigh, up in Queensland, so that's a few states away from me. In Australia, which is going to be super fun. That'll be the first QS event. In terms of what I'm working on at the moment, right now I'm getting out of bells a lot. In terms of the waves that we have on tour, predominantly right-handers. So if we look at Bells and El Salvador and Malibu and all of that, yeah, essentially, and Burleigh, which I'm going to, they're all rights. So I'm a goofy footer. Just gotta do what the conditions give me. So I'm really honing into my backhand surfing, and trying to surf waves with a fair bit more power as well. If you saw a video that I created after the tour last year, it was around addressing the areas of my surfing that I really need to be getting on top of. Obviously, very, very confident with my nose riding aspect, and so I need to be getting more confident and really developing the turns element of my surfing and not steering away from that as such. I feel like I've made a lot of progression with that within the past few months, so I'm really excited to get going with it this year. But there's certainly some things that I'm working on. Other things that I'm working on at the moment is just improving, my overall surfing, not relying on just my nose riding. And then I don't want to speak about it too much, but I guess other little strategic things with heats. So being more selective, thinking less, and yeah, I won't delve too much into that because it's probably not applicable for, I guess, many of the people watching. But from a competitive, if ever you want anything from a competitive standpoint, a video on that or what my thoughts are, please feel free to message, because I do a lot of time thinking about it. With my online coaching as well, I'm coaching a few people who are doing QS and stuff like that. So yeah, feel free to get in touch if you want anything like that as well. All right, next question. So can you give a lesson on walking backwards after a nose ride? Absolutely. I saw this question, I thought, what a good video. I can't believe I haven't really touched on that very much. So what I'll be doing, likely in the next edit of the Sunday Glide, I will do a video on walking back from the nose. But Some quick tips that I will go into more depth with in that video will be that essentially a lot of the time when we're learning our walk back from the nose, there's a couple of main problems. Firstly, we're learning to cross step backwards for the first time coming back from the nose, which is quite a tricky position. If we're to do a little change and actually practice getting really confident with the walk back from the middle of the board to the tail, this is actually going to be much easier. You're going to give yourself more time, more repetition, and it's just a really good way to go about things from the start. From there, what we also notice is when people are walking back from the nose is they feel like they have to get back to the tail to re-establish their balance. And so you'll see their legs go straight, they'll be walking 4 steps back, their arms will go up in the air, and the board will shoot out in front of them, so they'll fall. What we really need to be doing, we want to come back to our home base or our stability center of the board, which is actually the middle, and that's only 2 steps away. So if you can actually get your first 2 steps and then come back into a stable position, that's going to do a lot to help you out. There's 2 really good things to just focus on a little bit, I guess, but wait for an upcoming video because I definitely want to cover that in more depth. It's super, super important, and I agree, one of the trickiest things to learn in the kind of intermediate stages of our longboarding. Alrighty guys, there's still more questions to come. After going through and editing that, it is literally a 40 to 50 minute video, so I'm gonna split it into 2 different sections, but still some really, really good tips, interesting questions to come. Again, thank you so much for all supporting. Thanks for putting in the questions. We'll get another video up and running in a couple days time. We'll see you then.